So welcome back, Manish, Hitesh, Tarandeep. Thank you for joining us. We met exactly 6 weeks ago, and that time we knew the crisis was coming, but it was difficult that time to talk about the magnitude, the amplitude, the size, and also the direction. But now, both locally and globally, I guess there is some evidence that we can, have a more nuanced view of the world. So, Manish, the big concern was job losses, and that concern has translated into reality. Each sector, directly or indirectly, is talking about a salary cut and a job losses. Everybody, Manish, is using the word new normal. But what to your mind is the new normal? Last time when we met, you said, look, there's no template which will tell me what is the new normal. But now that there's more data available, are you in a position to share something beyond what you shared last time?
Well, I don't think there's going to be a new normal. There's going to be many new normals, right? We are all in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat. So depending on which sector you're in, depending on how much debt you have, depending on which geography you operate, depending on whether you're a B2B or B2C business, depending on whether you need people to come physically like restaurants or hotels, or whether you operate digitally. So my sense is the lockdown lifting, anyway, the one-size lockdown was a blunt instrument after, 30, 40 days. So now that it's being lifted, the reality is that some companies have opportunities that they've never seen before. Some companies will not survive. Some employees will thrive, and some employees will find themselves out of jobs. So I don't think there is, there is no new normal. There are millions of new normals based on your opening balance, based on your skills, based on your debt, based on your business. And those are evolving very quickly. And I think that, every revolution, creates opportunities for the insurgents. The incumbents in India are being challenged right now, but there are many insurgents in new industries which are making huge progress, and many incumbents which would not have yielded room in the past are being forced to yield room. So I wouldn't say there's a new normal which is all bad, all good, or all growth, or all degrowth, or all unemployment, or all employment. The reality is that the recovery will be very distributed, very unequal, and very sort of extended.
I would request all participants to start typing their questions, because this webinar, perhaps you just want to take as many questions. I want to increase the level of engagement, because the reason why our panelists have given us the valuable time is because we genuinely want to address well and talk about some of your concerns and queries. Hitesh, the headlines which are coming from the startup community or for the gig economy is slightly disappointing. It's not scary, we're not there yet, but it is disappointing. The big boys have started cutting down jobs, whether it is Ola, Uber, Swiggy, or Zomato. What is going on?
No, like I completely agree with Manish. I think the story is very uneven. A lot depends on which category you're in, which sector you're in, which geography you're in, at what stage of your business are you today. Now, the truth about the startup world is that VCs have given money to startups, okay, to grow, right? They're interested in growth. The reason startups have these crazy valuations is because they're expected to grow rapidly over the next few years. I mean, none of these startups make money, as we all know. So they're valued on revenue multiples, or they're valued on number of customers, they're valued on number of orders, or whatever you may say, right? So the metrics are very different. And if those metrics start trending south, you have a problem, because none of these startups make money anyway. And if they stop adding customers, if they start losing business, if the top line starts going down, then of course there's a challenge. And VCs have not given money sort of to startups to just pay salaries to employees. And which is why you're seeing what you're seeing. The startup world is brutal in that sense. There are some who will, of course, who are benefiting from what's happening around us, depending on the sector they are in. I can tell you, for example, one of the companies we've invested in, Policy Bazaar, is in the insurance space. Now they're benefiting on the insurance side from what's happening, because more and more people are buying or inquiring about insurance digitally. But there are certain other businesses that have been very badly hit because of the lockdown, more than the economy even, right? And they want to sort of to survive, because not everybody has a big cash balance. Not everybody can afford to pay salaries if there is no business coming in. They are doing what it takes in the short run to survive. And they're hoping that, once the sort of economy goes back to even 80-90% of normal, they'll be back in the game. So that's really what's happening out there. At the same time, it's not as if all funding has dried up. Some new startups are getting funded, but there the check sizes are small. On the unicorn side, what you have to also understand is that the big checks are drying up, right? And the big investors themselves are in a bit of a problem. So SoftBank has not had the best last few months. They were a big investor in India. Now we have a problem with China sort of brewing on the border. I don't know what that will do to Chinese big checks, which were also which had also started coming in over the last few years. So there is actually, as we speak right now, a dearth of investors who can cut very big checks, and therefore, startups who are burning a lot of money will have to become more conscious.
Tarandeep, before I take a dive into the questions which are already hitting our screens, when we met Tarandeep 6 weeks ago, we all were trying to understand where economy and the job market was moving. In your interpretation, looking at the way how things are stacked up, now that some part of the economy has opened up, there is good news and there is bad news. What, to your mind, currently we should focus on? Are you part of the optimistic camp who believes things will be all right? Or are you part of the realistic camp who believes that we are in for a slow, painful, and a low recovery?
I think there is always certain bright sparks in any situation that one is put in. It could be a sectoral mix of what's coming up, what's going down. At the same time, I believe there are opportunities, let's say purely between an urban and a rural divide. We now see 23 million migrants are moving back, and this is just an estimated number because nobody knows the number in real true sense. When 23 million people are moving back to the rural areas, what kind of jobs could exist in that landscape? At the same time, we know for the last 4 to 5 years, actually the rural economy has been growing at a faster clip than urban. Now, is there a silver lining? Also compound with this, the agriculture this year. It has actually been better than what it has been in the last couple of years, which means that probably there would be more disposable income on that side of the economy. And therefore, if the governments were, and maybe our UP chief minister has been a little proactive on this, trying to create a whole library of skills, who's at what level, etc. But clearly, if you put all of these 2 or 3 things together, there could be an opportunity that the rural again has a way to go ahead of the urban in terms of the growth or the recovery side of it. Second, I think if I look at, let's take some of the big companies globally, and I'm just taking that as a comparison. We have what we used to call as the FANG is now being called as the FAM, which is your Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Alphabet, and Microsoft. Just between themselves, they have been spending last quarter $29 billion into research and development. By the way, that's the total annual budget of NASA that the US government has sanctioned for it. Right? Now, if you compare while there is a flow of money, like Hitesh said, is drying out for the startups, there is also a steady money that the established big corporates continue to invest. And the names doesn't stop at these 5. These 5 are probably the topmost in them. There are a lot of other companies who are big enough and who have the muscle power to continue spending. So I think that's again a bright spot, that they will not go away, that that the times are bad now. In fact, if you draw up a list and see in the last month to 6 weeks, they have actually been on an acquisition spree, and they are going ahead and acquiring companies, which is what they do best. When times are bad, valuations are low, they go ahead and strike it. So therefore, I think there is a second part of the silver lining that also exists. And similar, you can draw a parallel with what's happening in India as well. Like we read, after Facebook's interest in Reliance, there is also a renewed interest by Google into an Idea and a Vodafone. Right? So as you can see, I'm probably more on the optimist side, but at the same time, I would say it's not blanket. Jobs have been lost. There has been reduction. So that is no longer a question. The question we should be asking is where and how, will this recovery start, and what can government do, what can private entrepreneurs, do, as well as how we can support the recovery.
Strength, speed, and duration. These are three things which all of us need to understand about the recovery. So, Manish, I'm going to take the first question. It is coming from Parvati K, and it is pretty much on lines of the word new normal. If there is a new normal, then the skills also would be required new and different. In your assessment, what should one do and focus on in terms of acquiring a skill which will keep a person employed?
I mean, if you want to guarantee buy a toaster, yeah, only compliances comes with guarantees. So I would not offer any guarantees. I would be careful with the disease that historians call presentism. That today's circumstances are so special and so unique that no ever generation has faced this before. The skills which are valuable have been becoming more valuable for the last 10 years. Curiosity matters more than intelligence. Soft skills matter more than hard skills. In a world where Google knows everything, knowing is useless. So I would submit that these have been trends which have been with us for the last 5 years. They are getting amplified and sort of extended. So digital literacy is a key thing. And while obviously this is the worst job market in the last 20 years for a graduate for an MBA graduate or a graduate to look for. But kids have two advantages which adults don't. One is they are digitally literate, and second is they are cheap. So a lot of companies are looking at refinancing some of their old fogies. So I mean, as I said, where you stand on an issue depends on where you sit. So many young kids will receive opportunities that they would not have had because companies are looking very hard at their headcount, and they are saying that, look, this job being done by somebody for 20 years can be done by a hungry, grateful, digitally literate, cheaper kid. So I would not say that for kids, you really have to think that, yes, it is a difficult job market, but you will have opportunities. So the skills are quite clear. Companies will be hiring for attitude. They can teach them skills, but being digitally literate, having the sort of learner profile, right, where you're confident, curious, risk-taker, team player, are actually much more important than your ability to sell something or to be a customer service person or to even weld something, in my mind. Because soft skills matter more than hard skills, and technology and automation is taking away the value of many of the hard skills. So I would say the new normal is obviously values soft skills more than hard skills. It's hard to define soft skills. It's hard to learn soft skills. But the reality is that the wage premium today has moved to soft skills over hard skills.
Okay, there's another interesting question. Everyone is talking about e-education, but will traditional HR firms or will traditional companies consider online education and online skills, and will I get a premium, and will they be considered on merit? Is it worth walking that path? Hitesh?
Absolutely. See, there are two sort of parts to this. One is, today there is a need to constantly sort of learn and relearn and unlearn and to upskill yourself. So there, I think nobody has a choice. It's too expensive to go to traditional sort of colleges and universities to acquire these new skills. And often they don't know how to teach them. They're not sort of equipped even because the world is changing so rapidly. So I think that is a given. In fact, we just did a survey amongst our job seekers, and almost 50% of the job seekers said they're using this time to upskill themselves, right? And they're upskilling themselves because there are lots of courses available online which were not available earlier. So there is a ready market for those courses. Those courses are in demand. Job seekers are paying for them. People, working professionals are paying for them. They're already upgrading their skills as we speak. And it's only a matter of time before HR departments, in companies, they're always a few months behind mostly, but they'll realize the value of these skills and they'll start sort of valuing them. Now, whether online education can replace traditional college and university education at the younger in the younger bracket, there also, my personal belief is that almost maybe 70-80% of all colleges in India and maybe a lesser number overseas don't add too much value after you're done with school. In some ways, schools also don't add too much value. That's a separate issue. But once you're done with school, a lot of universities and colleges in India don't add too much value. They're basically, their job is to make life easier for HR managers to hire, because HR managers, otherwise, if they have to sort of sift and sort, from a pool of like 10 million or 20 million sort of people passing out every year, it's very hard, right? So what they do is basically say, okay, these are the guys who want to become MBAs, these are the guys who are interested in engineering, these are the guys who are interested in coding, so please come here and hire them. They don't really do an great job of teaching or skilling the graduates or the students they take in. I think it's only a matter of time before these small colleges and universities who don't have a brand, who have not invested enough in good faculty, pedagogy, curriculum, also get disrupted by the online players. You bear in mind that the online players can throw a lot of money at the problem because they are reaching out to a much larger audience. They can build scale over time, and therefore they're willing to invest and do a lot, and a lot more into each area than some of these smaller players can. And to your earlier point also, and what Tarandeep said, this is actually an issue which is staring us in the face, that the world is going to become more and more oligopolistic in every area because of the rise of digital technology, and that is something we should watch out for.
Tarandeep, again, I'm just, on purpose picking up questions from the webinar chat window, because I just want to increase the engagement level here, and we want to open this webinar about addressing concerns and queries. A couple of questions, and I would imagine they are coming really towards the middle level managers. What is the future of middle level managers, Tarandeep, at a time when companies are also resorting to cost cutting? Could there be a case that the middle level managers get crunched as companies will replace higher cost with lower workforce and entry level people? Tarandeep?
Yeah, and I would say absolutely, with a caveat, like a consultant never says, completely black and white things or what, how the facts are. And I would say that keeping in mind that one, this whole wave of the utility of a middle manager has been questioned now for the last maybe 7 to 8 years. So it's not a new phenomena, that's happening. In fact, now the pace of that is just suddenly gone up, and everybody who even was able to probably subsidize them for a while is these are the first ones to go away for absolutely, very clear reasons. Once the younger ones are cheaper, they are more hungry, their ability to train faster, new technology, etc. is faster, and one doesn't need people managers to manage a pyramid any longer. In fact, if you just think about it, how we are running this session or running our lives regularly, what's the role of a middle manager who typically used to manage, a workflow of a job, regular activities, performance management, and so on and so forth. In fact, I would say the whole push is not only at the middle, the push has already started to happen at the senior levels as well now, because current times is now re-questioning where do you cut out the biggest flab so that many more in the organization can, in the sense, subsist, as well as the organization has a strategy. It has a product roadmap. It has an innovation engine that needs to continue function. And I don't think companies are backing away from that agenda in the current times. They are just finding new pockets from where they can take out, more and more money and push it out. So I think both middle as well as senior are at a risk. In fact, one of the studies that we did around 5 or 6 weeks back told us that most of the companies said their campus and graduate recruitment plans were going as per schedule, at least the large ones. And they were putting a stop or a freeze only to middle and senior level hiring. So there are definitely opportunities that will come up on the horizon. They may not still be in a very large number compared to what it was last year, but like my co-panelists have already said, it's going to be a function of skills and who's more relevant at that time. And then the whole spate of e-learning continues to enable the journey.
Manish, we often hear the word relevance. How would you define the meaning of relevance, Manish, and what do you think would be relevant and non-relevant? How does one understand that?
I mean, I think that what is relevant, I mean, Heraclitus, he was a Greek historian, he used to say you can never step in the same river twice, right? Because the river is different, you are different, and the world is different. And my sense is that 50% of the jobs created in the US in every decade since the 1960s did not exist in the decade before that. So I think it was a very big sampling error over the last 10, 20 years, or at least in my parents' time when the world was much more stable and the jobs were same for 20, 30 years. So I think kids today who have graduated, especially say people like technology, IT, the industry has been used to changing the technologies, the coding, and every 5 years or 10 years automatically. The most self-healing organizations or most self-healing workforce in this country has been our IT workforce. There are 4 million people who are on their fourth wave of technology, probably sixth language and seventh different style of sort of organizing themselves. So I think relevance is not a static concept. Relevance is recognizing, just like as an entrepreneur, I recognize every time you double your revenues, you have to change yourself, your people, your structure, and it's not more cooks in the kitchen, it's a different recipe. Same thing happens in every industry now much faster. There's no such thing as a technology company anymore. Every company is a technology company, which is why if you're a sales guy, you get a 25% premium if you know how to use Salesforce.com. If you're a logistics guy and you already have a two-wheeler and know how to use GPS intuitively, then you get a 15% wage premium. So I can go into the relevance as either soft skills, as digital skills, but just recognizing that constant learners are the ones who stay relevant because, as Tagore used to say, life is not the infinite elongation of a straight line.
Well, that's a great example. Hitesh, you may want to comment on this entire debate of relevance. Yes, it is important to acquire skills which are relevant, but how does one go about judging and understanding that what is relevant and what is not relevant?
Yeah, so I think geography also matters a lot. I mean, I agree with a lot of what Manish said. But for example, if you are a techie in Bangalore, you're expected to have the latest sort of skills in the tech world because Bangalore is a high-tech market. On the other hand, if you're a sort of a techie in Jaipur and you want a job in Jaipur but not in Bangalore, you may be, okay, sort of, because the kind of companies which exist in Jaipur are different from the kind of companies which exist in Bangalore. And you want to remain only in Jaipur, it's okay if you're a few years behind, right, than the guys in Bangalore. Similarly, if you're somebody in Lucknow, there are no tech companies in Lucknow unless and until you're sort of able to get a tech job online. You're better off not having tech skills. You're better off having other skills which are more relevant to the Lucknow market, especially if you want to remain in Lucknow, right? So there's a geographical sort of context to relevance as well, especially if you're not mobile as a worker. Drivers may be in very big demand in Delhi, and you may want drivers who sort of know how to operate a mobile phone, GPS, etc. But may not be so relevant in Patna, for example, right? Maybe you need drivers who are sturdier and who can also provide security to you, when you travel with them. So there is a geographical context, and we are seeing that, in our data also. And of course, the world is changing everywhere. So what is happening in Bangalore today is going to happen in Pune maybe 3 years down the line or 5 years down the line. And maybe what is happening in Pune today will happen in Jaipur 5 years down the line, and so on and so forth. So there's a time sort of element to this as well. But clearly the world is becoming more and more digital everywhere. And it sort of, and clearly you have to be a continuous learner. You have to keep evolving with the time if you want your salaries to keep going up, because beyond a point, companies are not going to pay you more if you're not more productive. And one clear way to make yourself more productive is to use more tech in whatever you do, right? So if you're a sales guy, if you can, if you were cold calling earlier to get leads, if you can now, spend half that time online and generate more leads, you're more productive, right? But then you should know how to generate leads online for a sales call and to get new customers online. So clearly, the name of the game is technology. It's a common thing. Of course, different sort of parts of the country may be at different points in the spectrum. But clearly, you have to keep investing in upskilling yourself all the time.
Okay. Tarandeep, lots of questions are even coming on my Twitter handle on the new definition of work from home. Now, Tarandeep, the world started working from home not out of choice, but a lot of corporates are now openly admitting, sharing, and declaring that the future workforce, majority of it will be working from home, whether it's an Indian company like TCS or a global company like Facebook or Spotify or even Twitter. So work at home, Tarandeep, what has been your experience in terms of analyzing productivity? And do you think right now the crisis is making people talk about work at home, and once on the medical front there is good news, will work at home, the concept or culture, will it be challenged again?
Yeah. Uh, so I think work from your home is here to stay. As much as, we hear Corona is here to stay, and we got to learn to live with it. Overall, the percentage of employees coming into office, while that will reduce, I would say that has a, if you were to extend it beyond by saying, I work in a particular city, I used to go to office. Now the big question to ask ourselves is, do I need to live in the same city? Right? Because the whole point of, earlier all the tier 2, tier 3 cities were drawing and pulling people into the tier 1, and the problem of urbanization, garbage, water, sanitation, everything else used to come along with that. So I would say work from home is not only here to stay, but actually is going to change the way employers and employees communicate with each other, and how today all of us are open to our employees no longer being in front of us. Though I've heard a few scary stories of some managers still insisting that, the employee has to take a selfie in front of a camera or in front of a laptop and post it every an hour or something like that. But those are rare examples. More often than not, the situations are, can the employees start to live wherever they wanted to live and still work pretty much as productively as you would expect them to do? In fact, I think that's where the, a big solution to India's problem of these urban cities or smart cities, if you were to say, comes in. And that to me is a huge opportunity, which the government should actually make it faster, both in terms of pretty much infrastructure, which is to allow commutes at that pace, as well as, technology infrastructure that should be able to back it up. So I'm just probably adding a layer to your question instead of just leaving it at work from home and, what's happening in that. But I do think there is a, again, optimism in me. There is again a silver lining out there.
Can I respond a little bit to Taran?
Yes, Manish.
Yeah. So I would be careful with this. An argument against offices is an argument against cities. New York's GDP is equal to Russia with 4% of the people and 0.00005% of the land. Because their productivity is a complicated concept in a knowledge economy, and there are benefits to coming together, even for knowledge workers. Second, if you work with your hands and legs, you can't work from home. Only 5% of Indians have broadband, only 5% have a room where they can work from at home. And so 95% of Indians, yes, IT is interesting, but IT is 4% of the labor force. I'm repeating myself. They're 0.8% of India's labor force. So most people can't work from home even if they want to. Yes, the cognitive elite was about 2 to 4% working from home. Because of this randomized control trial, we will move up to 5 to 10%, maybe 15% in some cases. But overall, work from home is not the new normal for the human race. It is the new normal maybe for cognitive elites, and that also we will have to see about productivity in the long run, because the biggest losers from work from home will be young people who learn by watching, who learn by listening, and who learn by the osmosis of knowledge that happens in an office. The best management training programs are the ones where you learning by doing and learning while watching. And that can't be replicated in working from home. So I absolutely think we have bumped the curve from 2% pre-COVID to 10% post-COVID, but working from home is not the new normal for the workforce.
Good point. So we got one vote in favor of work at home, one vote against work at home, and those are perfect examples. Hitesh, I'm going to encourage you to jump in, and by end of the question, we will know whether you are Tarandeep's friend or Manish's friend. Do you support work at home?
Of course, I support work at home, but what we've learned in the technology world, and it's always said, is that whenever there's a new technology, people tend to overestimate the impact in the short term, but underestimate the impact in the long run, right? So the internet is not new. Internet is more than 25 years old as a technology. But for the first 5-10 years, the internet penetration in India and also in many parts of the world was very tiny, was very low, less than 10%. But look at what has happened in the last few years. And suddenly now we have half of India on the internet. For all you know, I mean, one doesn't know how it's going to play out. People may be overestimating the trend. So not many sort of things will change on the work from office front in the short term. But yes, many companies are going to start experimenting, and like we will start experimenting for sure, as far as work from home is concerned. And in the beginning, it may just be a trickle, maybe up for 1%, 2%, 3% of our workforce till we get our act right. And if it starts to work, who knows? 10 years from now, it could be 20, 30, 40%, 50% of the workforce. So that is what may happen to many companies. Of course, jobs which require you to be physically present, there is no option. They have to be sort of done, by being in office. But my sense is overestimated the impact of work from home in the short term. I don't think many companies will overnight move to work from home. It'll take them a long time. But once they get it right, and they may take 2 or 3 or 4 years to get it right. And if it starts to work, and if, more and more technology and more tools are thrown at the problem, which is bound to happen if there is a new market which emerges, then, the impact could be huge over a period of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a question. Yes, please.
Okay. I think and I would like to
Because
believe
Manish
is my closer friend, is what I would like to believe. But I'll just take a cue and maybe, to what also Manish said. So, I'm not doubting that whether it's the construction worker, people in the non-informal sectors, will they continue to go to work or not? I think the point is that if I look at economy, and maybe to my earlier, the point that if I look at rural economy, the economies which is into, tier 2, tier 3 cities, if we start to push those along, and then imagine what technology does. Technology allows you to basically create a larger pool of people across who can service customers right onto their doorstep. Today, all of that is limited only to larger cities or where it is happening. So in that context, if you think about a much larger play where our companies are, not limiting to a smaller client segment or ecosystem, and then imagine what is happening. Basically, they are working out of their towns, their homes, wherever they are. They may not be cognitively elite, but they still will have opportunities. But it's all going to be a function of where does the growth come from. If the growth will again get limited to 5 metros or 10 other cities around it, then I think we will continue to have the problem that we have at our hand.
Okay, great point. Okay, Hitesh, it's a question which perhaps I'm trying, it's pondering in my mind, which is that if somebody has to go for a digital interview, which are the right pants to wear? How should one dress up? How should one address it? And how should one deal with it?
Actually, to be honest, we are experimenting with that, because we have an experiment going on in our company where we're trying to create digital profiles of people. And we are playing with different formats, because we are learning as we go along. There's no one sort of size which fits all. We are playing with short formats, long formats, where we ask questions and the person answers, where we allow the person to speak extempore, and so on and so forth. So this is, to my mind, these are things which will sort of, one will figure out over time. For the time being, it is best to behave like you behave in a regular interview and a digital interview as well, what I would say.
Manish, you raised a very important point, which is that workplace is also an osmosis of talent and creativity. And the fantastic example in front of us is Silicon Valley and the modern office of Silicon Valley. If you walk into a Google campus or if you walk into a Facebook campus, I had a rare opportunity to walk into both. And that's a different feel, empowers you, it enables you, it also unleashes the creativity in you. So for those who are thinking that, look, I'm going to move my workforce to home and somebody is going to work from a laptop in a house where I got my wife and my son and the kitchen pressure cooker, what happens to my productivity?
I think that it's too early to say. I have no argument against it. I would just say that our current frustration with commutes has really resulted in this anger against boundaries between work and life. But as we have no boundaries left, as the commute gets added to Zoom calls like yours, or confiscated by Zoom calls like yours, we may start appreciating boundaries between work and office again. I'm just, the world doesn't change overnight for a reason, because there's a good status quo and bad status quo. We don't appreciate the good status quo as much. We don't get rid of the bad status quo as fast as we could. So I think that, yes, there are some advantages to working from home. And I actually think that maybe the net outcome will be you will work from home 1 or 2 days a week. This binary. So it's nice to be able to have 1 or 2 days a week to work from home. But this notion that you will work from Jalandhar because you don't need to be in Bangalore at this point may be challenged. I agree with Taran that we should not have 52 cities with more than 1 million people in India. China has 375 cities with more than 1 million people. So let's not define urbanization as shoving more people into Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore. But I think the work from home is nice as an option to have a few days a week. I think we will go from 5 to 15% of the workforce. But I, for one, am a little get the fatigue between no boundary between work and home. It may work for other people. I'm not sure it's working as good for me because, I'm not, people in the middle of the road get hit by trucks from both sides. Let's just say that.
Fair point. Tarandeep, a question perhaps addresses what we say is 10% of India's GDP, which is the hotel and the tourism sector. Now, that sector has seen a crunching fall for obvious reasons. And this sector, in a sense, creates a lot of employment. Now, there is going to be unemployment. For someone who's associated with this sector, what is the way out? Because this is one sector where a work from home would be difficult. B, this is a sector where fortunes are unlikely to turn around. And this is one sector where job losses are going to be there and they are real.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think not only, I would say, hospitality sector, but even something like travel, right? If you take any of the frontline, which has a high exposure to others, will probably run the risk of either automation, because companies will want to evaluate other options there, or people themselves, may not be very keen to enter into that space. Leave apart the overall growth or consumption in these sectors will still take some time to resume. So that definitely remains, a challenge. What I think, is there is also an opportunity with the similar skills. So if you look at, China's model, they have actually started putting together a plan to say where can workers who will come out of segments like this can be redeployed. If you take, maybe my favorite examples do come from technology companies, but like Amazon, it's already declared it wants to hire more people. Now, there could be segments in there that will require people who understand how a customer behaves, right? And Amazon is just not a company which is only coding. It's fundamentally doing a lot of intelligence into a consumer behavior that they need to articulate and then transform and get the system to, pretty much understand, adapt, and react to that. So likewise, there would be jobs in certain other sectors, which I believe, will require skills like this. Now, having said that, I think both the companies and the individuals will have to experiment in the current phase that we are in. If people have been looking for job security, then especially from these sectors, I would actually encourage them to go on the side of experience. Even if you get 3 to 6 months of an opportunity where there would be just gaining experience on, different sectors, a job that came my way, and very limited, exposure to other things, they should absolutely pick it up. Because before they finally decide what sector will be appropriate for me, this could again become an opportunity to, reevaluate where one stands. So one, I would say experience. Second, I would say is be open to freelancing more and more in the current circumstances, and don't look for that, penultimate security that everybody in the past, has been running after. So the resumption will require higher adaptability in that sense.
Pooja Khanna Tarandeep has a specific question. How will companies like Aon measure soft skills in youth?
Interesting. So we actually already, given that we are a large assessment firm globally, we already assess both hard technical skills as well as soft skills abilities, as part of our business. So a lot of the clients that we work with, and actually we talk a lot about digital currently. So in this context of assessing even an individual's readiness to be getting onto a digital economy is something that we have done for the last 2 or 3 years. And overall, what we assess for is actually talent pretty much for both soft as well as hard skills. So it's a bread and butter business. So I don't want to make a sales spiel, but it's absolutely, possible. And we do it for some of the largest corporates, both in India as well as globally.
Can I add to him?
Yes,
because never ask a barber if you need a haircut. What is Taran going to say? my response would be that Justice Brandeis in the U.S. Supreme Court was once asked to define pornography, and he says, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. And I know that may not be helpful, but I think most managers know soft skills for the jobs, because the soft skills for sales are different from the soft skills for logistics, which are different from the soft skills for hospitality, which are absolutely different from the soft skills from being a board member. So I would say that, yes, soft skills is much harder to define, much harder to measure, but intuitively don't think of soft skills as the same thing for all profiles, all functions, and all industries also, because then you just reduce it to English or communication or cut your nails and take a bath and shave, which is a part of soft skills, but it's really at the base camp of soft skills.
Was that intended
and that's also
towards
the reason
Hitesh?
why?
No, I think that was intended purposely towards Hitesh because of his new look, Manish.
No. Hitesh has high soft skills. Yeah, his hairline is receding.
I think Manish is making a case actually for a spa or a saloon, given that everybody needs different treatment, every job needs to be measured differently.
Absolutely, agree.
That's what I call as opportunity. These are the lighter moments all of us are perhaps enjoying when we are working from home. And the panelists have already identified 3 soft skills which perhaps would be required. Hitesh, this one's coming from a parent, and I think it's a very simple and interesting question, which is that I'm investing in my son's education for a bright future. How it works in India is that you do IT and IM and you get a good job. Guess what? This skill now also costs a lot of money. Should I invest in my child's education out of my savings so that he can get a better future? And the future is changing. What will be the value of education? It's a great question. Hitesh?
Yeah, so I sort of so again, like I mentioned earlier in the call, education is different from degrees, and what a lot of middle class families in India do, unfortunately, is they are sort of bitten by this bug that I need to make my son an engineer, I need to make my son a doctor or an MBA, and they are willing to spend a lot of money to get them a degree, irrespective of the college or the institution the degree is from. And often a lot is not taught in these places, and they are all over the place. So there are maybe 5,000 engineering colleges in this country. There are 2,000 or 3,000 management institutes, and they're not cheap anymore, right? So if you get into a good government college, you're still okay. You don't have to pay a lot for education. But even a tier 3 MBA would cost you maybe 5-7 lakhs nowadays. A tier 3 engineering college where not much is often taught would cost you a lot. So I would say, listen, IITs, IIMs, the best government colleges, they're still world class. And if your son or daughter is able to get into these colleges, of course, it's not easy because you need a 95% or a 93%, or you need to crack the JEE and the advanced JEE and some of these entrance exams to get in, which only a few thousand people every year are able to do. So if you're in that bracket, and it's fine. I think please sort of go ahead and invest. The ROI is still very great, very, very good. But, if for some reason, your son or daughter is not able to make it, he's, not a great sort of academically, not so bright, is not a 90%er, but a 60%er or a 50%er. Then what I see a lot of people doing is they still try and get them into college, and, they pay through their nose to get them into whichever college they can get so that they can say, listen, he's an engineer, he's an MP. I think those days may be changing. And that is where online sort of education also comes in. I think there's a lot more with students, and you may still want to go ahead and get that degree, because if you think it's required for other reasons, sometimes you need a degree to get married, sometimes you get a degree just for your social sort of, there are several social benefits. Please go ahead and get them. But please ensure that, if your son or daughter is going to one of these places, he or she is able to supplement that education with a lot of online education, high quality online education, which is available today and which is not expensive, right? So because what ultimately he has to learn, and if he's able to learn through this route, and you still have to pay maybe 5 lakhs to somebody to get a degree, I think that's still fine. But ensure that he learns in the next 4 or 5 years, which he's going to spend in college.
Okay.
Can I just add? Can I just add that what Hitesh said is really important for parents to understand, because Michael Spence got his Nobel Prize for his work on the signaling value of higher education. Hitesh went to IIM Ahmedabad. It's a good place to be at, but it's a better place to be from, right? The fundamental value is being from IIM Ahmedabad. That's why he's sitting
Bangalore.
there. He went there. Oh, you went to Bangalore. Okay, even better. So he went to IIM. Is a better place to be from than to be at. And so, but this social signaling value is really diminishing, as Hitesh said, except for the elite ones, because they were lazy filters for HR managers to filter resumes. And so the new world of work, you have to balance the social signaling value of the degree with getting your employability from somewhere else. And it's tragic that colleges in India aren't 1/3 employment exchange, 1/3 ITI, and 1/3 college, which is really what a good university should be. And I think the new ones are more and more doing that.
Great point. We've already done 45 minutes. We've got another 10 minutes. And so I'm going to take another very interesting question. This one is coming from Mr. DP Singh. Tarandeep, this one's coming your way, so you may want to pay some extra attention here. Talking about future of jobs, do you think the number of jobs are going to grow much more in social and related sectors, Tarandeep, which is waste management, NGOs, health? Is there merit in thinking on those lines, Tarandeep?
Interesting. It's interesting that he picks up these three sectors, per se, because one, I think the need, especially in India, to address whether it's around waste or health is huge. So regardless of where we stand today, are the number of opportunities going to increase there? The answer to that is yes. Has it become organized enough where, the jobs, we hear a lot of stories about how waste management is pretty much like a mafia that runs with the local corporates, unfortunately, and contracts and others, being given out. Now, is there an opportunity where all of that space, can look different? I think the answer to that is yes. Are there entrepreneurs trying to do that? We have seen there are some good entrepreneurs who have already stepped in. Have they yet made a very large impact, at scale that will change the industry? I think the answer to that is no. Likewise, if you were to extend the whole conversation to health, I think it's far ahead of where waste management is, because there are, both currently organized setups, of private hospitals, of large institutions, whether education, practice, or otherwise, where there's a lot of research happening, as well as a lot of jobs are also getting, created in that sense. So I think the opportunity for both of them will continue. But at the same time, we also, because of now coming back to COVID, the whole situation of how many doctors and nurses, given the hardships that they have faced, especially during these current times, as well as how the people's reaction has been, to some of the situations where they have been put forth in. I think that has been extremely negative. There are rising incidents, against some of the health workers that we are noticing, and we are reading about some of it also by personal experience at least. And I can say, will people readily jump into it? I think the jobs will be more, probably the number of people wanting to do that, maybe that will, take some.
Well, Gopal is specifically, applauding the entire, all the panelists, and he's saying thank you for a lovely discussion. Now, before I get into the last round, I'm going to just set the tone for the last question. Hitesh, Manish, all of you have spent years and decades in corporate careers. I'm sure all of you have had good moments, bad moments, moments of despair, moments of triumph. But right now, there is a unprecedented situation. People are losing jobs. Some of them are not getting offers. Some dreams are getting shattered. And some dreams at college campuses, when they were about to start, guess what? The first line has not been written. How have you dealt with adversity, Manish, in your career when you planned something and when you did not get it? Would you like to share an experience just to encourage people, just to encourage students who are feeling slightly lost and disheartened right now, Manish?
I think the most important thing to realize is good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. I mean, it's just clear. There is no question that you develop judgment from the experiences you believe in. But I wanted to take a little umbrage at what you said about this revolution. Whether it was 1942 Quit India, whether it was Green Revolution, whether it was color TV in 1982, or whether it was liberalization in 1991. Every revolution in India has created great opportunities. And the pandemic has exposed that the Indian beat cop, Indian bank, Indian informal employers, Indian MSME and migrant have behaved exactly as we would expect them to. So I expect a flurry of outrage and reform on many things in India. Stuff that we have been waiting for years will happen in the next 5 years because of the images of migrants, because of the pain of MSMEs, because of the lathi of the beat cop beating a fruit vendor. So my submission is the next 25 years in India will be completely different from the last 25 years in India. And it's a great time to be in India. When I landed in the US in August 94, there was a front page article on the Wall Street Journal which said that India is more interesting than important. And I hope that journalist is eating the newspaper on which he wrote that. And I think kids born right now are absolutely going to be living in a different India. Our generation started, diminishing poverty, but this generation has a chance to put poverty in the museum it belongs. So I would submit that they are much luckier than us who were born in 1991. My parents were luckier than people who were born pre-independence. But this is our time, the next 25 years for India. And I think that I hope kids realize that and take advantage of the opportunities that a crisis like this will offer them.
Hitesh, the same question.
Yeah. So, in 2008, we had a serious sort of meltdown. And I remember we were growing as a company at 40-50% per annum before it happened. And then we went to minus 25% for the next few quarters. And I remember, being called to a TV studio at that time. I think it was NDTV. And, we were also much younger company. We had just gone public. And next to me were seated these two people who had been laid off the same day. They were laid off on SMS, right? And they were almost in tears, youngsters who were sort of without a job and they were laid off. And I think they were working for an airline at that time. But fast forward 4 quarters and, almost everybody was back, working for a company, had a decent job, and things were back to normal once again. So a crisis like these, of course, when one is going through them, they're very painful. And for the people who are impacted, it can be very, very hard. But what I've seen in the past, at least in India, is that nothing lasts more than 2 or 3 or 4 quarters, right? So it's only a matter of time. Even, 4 quarters from now, we could be sitting in a very different, place, and there may be a shortage of workers for all you know. Already I know, for example, I've seen a friend of mine who's got a factory in Noida. He's saying, sort of 80% people are available, 20% people have gone back home. We are trying to build a university in Mohali, Plaksha. Only 50% of the staff is construction workers available. There's a shortage of actually people, right? So there's a markets have a sort of tendency to autocorrect, and yes, there is a period of transition which we will go through, and it may last for 4 quarters, it may last for 6 quarters. But if you have the right skills and if you have the right attitude, and if you're willing to experiment, and if you're willing to think a little out of the box and stretch a little, be a little flexible, make a few adjustments, then I think it's only a matter of time before you'll be back at work in if not 2 quarters, in 4 quarters at max.
Tarandeep, let's get some words of assurance going from you as well. Manish is calling it a revolution. Now the challenge is that while the revolution end is great, the beginning is the tough part to deal with.
Yeah. And I would say, actually, most of the points are already made, between Hitesh and Manish, if I was to think about, what it could mean. But to your question of, what does it entail immediately? And I don't deny, I think currently there will be a fair bit of a bloodbath in terms of people's own anxiety, in terms of job losses, in terms of, just the worry that what's going to happen. Like if I look at the data for India, and we recently closed another study, at least more than 80% of companies said no job losses, at least in the formal sectors. Some of these names that we talk about, they just catch the headlines, but that's not the truth. 5 companies that are cutting jobs, there are 95 others that are not cutting jobs as of now, right? So the truth is not on the 5%, though it catches the headline. The truth is, probably somewhere more closer to 95. And in that sense, I think currently there is still a lot of positivity to exactly what Hitesh said. People and business leaders can, they know that this is not going to be a perpetual state of affairs. They are looking and closely tracking. Sensex itself closely tracks what it has been. Like, go beyond what has happened on the Dow, right? It's only down by I think 10 to 12% vis-a-vis the best high that it ever had. So which means everybody sees that crisis will have a return, and it'll be, for the better. I think as individuals, while we will go through a fair bit of current anxiety and challenge in the way things are, I would actually, advise, and what has always worked for me, don't stick to just doing one job. Actually understand yourself well enough to know where all you can transcend, and then be open to experimentations. There will be things that will come our way. Sometimes will be tough. Keep your head down, keep on adapting and moving things along. So it isn't like, a secret mantra that will solve everything. But I like to think about life, as 2 steps at a time, while having, a larger goal at the end of it. And just focus on those 2 steps as of now. When the times are tough, then maybe you need to even acknowledge that that goal is going to be, maybe a little bit more hazy in the storm that you are headed into.
Wonderful. So, I'm going to just throw one closing question at Manish. I love the way last time we quoted Harry Potter and Dumbledore. So Manish, time to talk some fairy tales. Not that, you're reading a lot of fairy tales, but, it's a nice way to end today's webinar with something from Harry Potter or your favorite fairy tale.
No, I think that I think that the strongest and oldest emotion among human beings is fear. And the strongest and oldest fear is fear of the unknown. I think that right now that is really what everybody needs to be mindful of. The virus is really small, but it seems to have taken over the world. But, to mind, given the tipping my hat to the Harry Potter quote last time where I said that it is our choices more than our abilities that matter. Actually, Nelson Mandela even improved on that, right? He said our choices must reflect our hopes rather than our fears. And it's a time where we are all scared of the unknown. And so I think our choices must reflect our hopes rather than our fears over the next 6 months or 1 year, and then we'll be fine. Because this is a mind game finally.
All right, gentlemen, really appreciate your time. Thank you for that lovely quote, Hitesh and Tarandeep. Thank you for your time. We've really addressed a lot of queries. It was a full house today. This is a second webinar, almost house full. So thank you very much for joining us. And a lot of people on the chat window, as you can see, are thanking for, all 3 of you for being open, for being vocal, and for really not concealing the truth and sharing your experience. So thank you very much. Have a lovely weekend, and hopefully we'll see you again. So last time when we met, it was a lockdown. Now it's partial lockdown. Hopefully it will be complete, no lockdown next time when we meet.